Coming to you from 4,200 feet in the hills of Oregon, it's the voice of Chi-Town, the reddest beard in the high desert, your host of the MOA broadcast, Sam Wilson. All right, folks, we got a great show lined up for you today. All kinds of good info. Let's just jump to the show highlights here before I get ahead of myself. We've got, remember the Wisconsin judge that we've been talking about for the last couple of episodes? She's been all over the national news with the whole, she allegedly tried to help an immigrant escape, an illegal escape when ICE was there. It was a whole mess. She's back in court. We have a lunchtime beatdown. It's not even funny, but I can't help myself. Kangaroos attack again. Those guys I'm telling you, man, they got an attitude problem, and frankly, I respect it. And we have, finally, tornado preparedness. There are a few little things speckled in there, peppered in along the way, but those are some of our highlights. So let's get right into it. Let me have a sip here, get my voice prepared for the day's activities. Okay, what do we got here? Milwaukee judge Hannah Dugan enters not guilty plea in federal court. She was indicted. So, if you'll recall, let's jump in. The Wisconsin judge accused of helping an illegal immigrant evade arrest by ICE in her courtroom. ICE, for those of you not in America, is Immigration and Customs Enforcement. They're the ones that come get you if you're here illegally. She entered a not guilty plea Thursday in federal court. Milwaukee County Circuit Court Judge Hannah Dugan was indicted by a grand jury on Tuesday, federal charges of concealing a person from arrest and obstruction of justice, following the alleged incident involving Eduardo Flores Ruiz last month. Around 200 protesters were demonstrating Thursday outside the federal courthouse in Milwaukee ahead of her court appearance. A trial date has now been set for July 21. It doesn't say what the demonstrators or protesters were demonstrating or the demonstrators were protesting, whatever. I have no idea, although I will say if you're in America right now, there is this insane rift with people, and we're not going to get political or dig too deep into this because it's a very polarizing issue for some people. I don't know why. It's pretty cut and dry for the most part, but there is a big rift right now between people that don't want to deport people that are here illegally, especially those that have committed crimes in addition to entering the country illegally, which is illegal. So it's a mess, and those who want to get rid of a lot. There were millions of illegal immigrants that have crossed the border and have entered the United States illegally in the last couple of years. It's a mess. A lot of people don't experience this because they don't live close to the border. But if you talk to people and watch interviews and footage down where border states are and where a lot of the crossings took place, it was insane. The amount of people that were flooding into the U.S. on a daily basis, and little to nothing was being done in a lot of ways, practically, to stop it. It was a mess. So anyway, this judge allegedly, apparently, whatever we want to call it here, according to the indictment and the affidavit we read last week, the ICE showed up to get this guy who had a court date, and she basically kind of let him out. She tried to stall the ICE, it sounded like, allegedly, and then led this guy out a side door, and then he took off. There was a foot chase. They had to chase him almost like a block or two, whatever. It was the length of the courthouse out on the street before they got him. And then he was taken to, last I read, he was in the detention center in Juneau or something like that, awaiting deportation. He may be gone already. Whatever, I don't really care. I never met the guy, so I don't have a dog in that fight. The indictment accused Dugan of falsely, quote-unquote, telling federal officials in April that they needed a warrant to come into her courtroom during a scheduled appearance by Flores Ruiz. That's the guy, an undocumented Mexican national, facing 3 misdemeanor battery charges. So he was already in court for misdemeanor battery charges when ICE decided to pick him up. So the guy couldn't even fly below the radar, it seems. She told this judge allegedly told immigration officers to go to the chief judge's office to get a warrant, and then escorted Flores Ruiz through a side door to evade federal agents. The complaint alleges. He was then arrested, Flores Ruiz, after a foot chase. If found guilty of both charges, she could face up to 6 years in prison and up to $350,000 in fines. Well, good luck. Just like that lady in New York, the AG there, Tish James or Letitia James, whatever her name is. I don't think I would want to be in these people's situation, even if they wind up getting off. This sounds like a mess, whether they did or not. I mean, when you get to the point where you're getting indicted, a grand jury looks at this and says, okay, you can get arrested. Here in the U.S., the way it works, you can get arrested for almost anything. A cop, and it doesn't always happen, or it infrequently happens this way, although it does happen unjustly sometimes. A cop cannot like the way you're walking, and if he really wants to do it, he can arrest you for a number of things, and you're going to go to jail and get processed there, and the charges may get dropped completely, and you walk right out the door, or it may wind up going to a grand jury, and they're like, there's nothing here, there's no evidence, or the DA or the PA may decide they don't want district attorney or prosecuting attorney, they may decide there's nothing here, we don't want to pursue this, let it go, and you walk. But when you get indicted by a grand jury, typically what that means is this is a group of people that have looked at this information and at the evidence, and they've decided that there is enough evidence there to warrant pursuing prosecution, and that it's possible or feasible to get a conviction out of this. Now, it may or may not happen, and charges may change or get dropped along the way still, but when you get indicted, that's a little bit more serious than just getting arrested. Like I said, you can get arrested for a lot of things, and it doesn't go any further once it actually goes up the chain. But when you get indicted, that's a little bit more serious. So whatever she allegedly did or did not do, best of luck on that one. We go to Whittier, California this time. We're going to give New York and Chicago a bit of a break here. We go to Whittier, California. An elderly man was punched in the face. My goodness, what is wrong with these people? By a homeless man in Whittier on Thursday afternoon, in a seemingly unprovoked attack. Now, this story actually took place a little bit ago, but it was tied to a bigger story on what California and the governor there are going to do about homelessness and this massive. Guys, if, again, we're not going to jump into and politicize this, but just the actual facts, the current events, they are under siege right now in parts of California with this homeless population, not in addition to a separate issue from the illegal immigration that is going on. The homelessness is out of control. Now, we got a lot of good stuff to cover, so I'm going to keep it moving here. But anyway, this story took place a little while ago, and it was part of a series of follow-ups on what are they going to do and what is the guy's name is Newsom, the Governor Newsom, going to do about the homelessness issue, because some of them get very violent. I've been attacked and had to deal with a number of things in my life with homeless people. I'm not picking on the fact that they're homeless. A number of reasons can lead you to that situation in life. But some of them, for a variety of reasons, a lot of times drugs get involved. And then, of course, you have to support yourself in some fashion, even if it's not a regular job, while you're homeless. And a lot of times that leads to other illegal or illicit activities, things like catalytic converter theft and, selling, recycling cans and selling all kinds of scrap and other things. I've been through and around a number of homeless camps in my life, and they're a hotbed of prostitution, drugs, and other things in many cases, not always. So this poor elderly man was eating his lunch, and he was punched in the face and pummeled with fists as he was enjoying his lunch on the patio of Mimo's Cafe. Without a warning, allegedly, according to the cafe owner, Ramon Arteaga, this is the homeless guy, I'm guessing, he just got up and hit one of my customers in the face with his fists. He was bleeding to the point he was taken to the hospital, and the elderly gentleman now has 4 stitches. So, according to the article and one or two others that I cross-referenced, this was an unprovoked attack. I don't know if the guy asked for a sandwich and the guy wouldn't give it, or if he just felt like, in a couple of encounters I've had with homeless people, one of which turned nasty, I was nearly attacked and it turned into a whole thing just because they didn't like the way I was walking, basically. There was no real offense. They just didn't like, and so things escalated, got a little ugly. Okay, Arteaga said attacks by homeless people seem to be increasing in the area, and hopes that the California Governor Gavin Newsom will help with the problem. Good luck. That was almost a year ago, and I don't know that people would say things have gotten better. The owner, Arteaga, also says attacks by homeless people seem to be increasing in the area. Well, I hope it works out, sir, and I mean that sincerely. We go to South Carolina. Kangaroo attacks. We've covered these a number of times. The kangaroos, they have serious upper body strength. They have strong and thick and sharp claws. If you ever do a search, an image on these kangaroos, they've got some nails almost like a dog on their paws or whatever we call their upper limbs. And they have it's almost like a velociraptor type thing on their feet or whatever they call their feet. I don't know the technical terminology. I didn't bother looking it up. It's not really curved and sharp as much, but it's a long, very large and thick. Obviously, it's going to be tough and durable middle claw. And then they have one on either side of it. So there's 3, I think, give or take. It's been a while since I looked at an image of it. But they can do some damage. But we go to South Carolina. Instead of Australia this time. You probably thought we were going to land down under, but no. This takes place in Horry County, South Carolina. Never heard of that. Horry, Horry County. This comes to us from the Mirror. South Carolina man found beaten to death in suspected kangaroo attack. Now, I'm not laughing at the man. The circumstances on this are bizarre. I read multiple articles, and I couldn't get a real straight answer on what exactly happened. But apparently, I'll read from the article, then we'll kind of jump in here. A 52-year-old man was found dead inside a kangaroo and wallaby enclosure with, quote, multiple blunt force injuries, end quote, at a South Carolina farm just outside of Loris, police said. He was killed in a suspected kangaroo attack after allegedly entering the animal's enclosure to, quote, roughhouse with it. Okay, no disrespect to this poor man and his family. I'm sure this is a difficult time, and I'm not laughing at that, but I don't know. It doesn't say whether anything else was involved, whether he had maybe a beer or two. I don't know. The way the article makes it sound, and I could be way off base on this, but they say he allegedly entered the animal's enclosure to roughhouse with its... I don't know if this guy went into the kangaroos and the wallaby enclosure to fight with this kangaroo, or have a boxing match with it, or a wrestling match, and if the wrestling got out of hand. I don't know. It's not funny, and my apologies. Okay. The deceased, let's get back to the article. The deceased, again, my apologies. The deceased, Eric State, was discovered in the facility located on Highway 746 just before midnight, Horry County authorities said. An autopsy is planned as officers continue to investigate. An earlier report by police said the man entered an enclosure with the non-domesticated animals. Police added there were a number of other animals at the incident location and that all are accounted for and contained with no risk to the community. So, yeah, we'll just leave that there. Again, my condolences to the family. That's not funny at all. I'm sorry. But I guess that's a risk you run if he went in there to roughhouse and wrestle with this kangaroo. Guys, this is the thing. We talked about this last week. We kind of a running theme here on the MOA broadcast. We talk about, nature. I'm a huge fan of the outdoors. I guess you could loosely call me a quote-unquote outdoorsman. But I love animals. I love the outdoors. I love being fishing, hiking, camping, anything to do outside. Eating and cooking outside are two of my favorite things in the world. When you eat outside, it just tastes better. So we kind of cover a lot of animal stories and stuff like that. And there's been kind of a theme. We think of domestic animals, your dogs and cats and, maybe goats and other things. Domestic animals, they play around. Wild animals, they don't take prisoners, man. When you deal with non-domesticated animals, they play for keeps. And again, that's not a knock on this guy at all. Who knows what in the world actually happened? You can't really glean much from this article, but they play for keeps. So you got to be careful. Okay, we're going to lose time here. We were going to do some some listener emails. We're not going to have time today. Folks, if you do, we got a couple we're going to catch up on hopefully next week. You got any questions, comments, feedback, feel free to send us an email, info@gearconvoy.com. We've also got a whole bunch of great stuff there under the MO8 broadcast tab on www.gearconvoy.com. We've also recently started offering laser engraved metal business cards. So we've done this for a while to people. I'm a professional knife maker by trade, and a lot of what I sell on the U.S. made side of my gear on gearconvoy.com is knives, survival knives, outdoor gear. I've been making business cards and like what they call COA, certificates of authenticity, for knife makers for their gear and their stuff for a couple of years, actually a little over a year and a half now, I guess. And so just recently decided to go ahead and offer that to the public. So there's some good stuff there. If you need that information, again, hit us up, info@gearconvoy.com. Okay, we move on. One of the things we talk about a lot here is food safety. If you look at what's going on, and this is a big thing happening in Washington right now with the Health and Human Services and with, we're not going to get the political side of it, but there's a lot happening trying to get rid of a lot of the nasty ingredients and dyes and stuff, chemicals, that is in our food supply here in the United States. It's a mess. So we go to Montana. Governor Gianforte, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, bans lab-grown meat in Montana. The Montana Farm Bureau celebrates the governor signing House Bill 401 into law. This comes to us from the governor's office, May 13, 2025. We've covered this. A number of states are jumping on this, and typically they're agricultural and meat-based, farming-based states, ranching states. Oh, we got a choo-choo train coming up here, so you may hear the horn in the background. They are banning this lab-grown meat. This stuff is insane. Let me do the article here, and then we'll get to it. There it is. Montana. Governor Greg Gianforte recently signed into law a bill that will ban the manufacturing and sale of lab-grown meat in Montana. If you've ever had the pleasure of enjoying a cut of Montana beef, I have, you know there is no substitute, the governor said. By signing House Bill 401 into law, I am proud to defend our way of life and the hardworking Montana ranchers who produce the best beef in the world. So basically, the bill defines cell-cultured edible products as the concept of meat, including but not limited to muscle cells, fat cells, connective tissue, blood, and other components produced via cell culture, rather than from a whole slaughtered animal. Whoa, that one got away from me. Look out. Paper on the run. Starting October 1, any retail food establishment in Montana that manufactures, sells, or distributes this cell-cultured edible product, they don't call it meat, edible product, is subject to suspension of their license and could be found guilty of a misdemeanor and faced with fines and imprisonment. Now, again, we've talked about this lab-grown or this cultured meat product in the past in the show, and I'm not knocking the people that are trying to make scientific innovation and so forth and the work that goes into this. But as mentioned by the governor there in Montana, this has been happening and occurring naturally just fine for thousands of years of human civilization. If you recall, it was last week or the week before, we were talking about these cultured, basically chicken nuggets that they're making. They looked in the pictures, I submitted it, or put the picture in the video version. It looks disgusting. And because the meat doesn't have the proper texture, because it's basically they take these muscle cells and they put them into what you could basically call an incubator. I think they called it a bioreactor or something. And they culture it and grow it. It doesn't taste and have the texture of regular meat. So they're inserting these like cellulose straws into it to give it texture and also to distribute the artificial or whatever of unknown origin, this quote unquote blood, synthetic or whatever it is, to feed the meat as it grows. Guys, this is, you do whatever you want and you eat whatever you want, but this stuff is disgusting to me personally. I see this stuff and I read about how it's made and it turns my stomach. Why would I want to eat these weird chunks of meat that are grown in a bioreactor with cellulose straws stuck into them to give the meat texture and flavor like real meat when I could just go eat real chicken? You see what I'm saying? It's, man, and you got to wonder. So I mentioned earlier, we talk about food safety a lot. Look at what's going on with just bread, okay? Um, have you ever made homemade bread? If you haven't, especially if you have kids and you use bread for sandwiches a lot, you need to do this because it is super easy. Excuse me, if you look up online, you can find recipes for homemade bread that are like four, five, or six ingredients. Basically, it's flour, a little bit of sugar, a little bit of salt, some oil, and yeast and water. And that's about all you need. And you can make a very, very good bread that tastes delicious, tastes far better than these loaves of whatever in the world it is at a grocery store. So if you have kids, especially, even if you don't, this is a project, in my opinion, I strongly suggest that you take on and try as soon as possible. Go find yourself, look up a simple bread recipe or something like that. I don't know what you call it, but do a search on simple bread recipe online or easy homemade bread recipe, something like that. And don't worry too much about getting the perfect one. Just try one. I make homemade bread on a weekly basis, and typically what I'll do is I'll do two loaves. Most recipes wind up calling for about 4 cups or so of flour. That will yield about 2 loaves of bread. Okay, so what you do is if you have multiple people or a large family, you're going to go through 2 loaves very quickly. If you only got one or two or three people, 1 loaf may last you for 2, 3, 4 days. So you go ahead and prepare all 4 cups or 5 cups of flour, and then you cut it in half. Put one half of it into a bowl. Put some, container lid or whatever on there. Seal it up and write the date on there and refrigerate it. And then you can come back to that later and you go ahead and bake the other one, the other half of it right then and there, and you make a full loaf of bread. It tastes so much better. It takes about 20, 25 minutes is all it takes for everything, including cleanup, other than letting the bread rise. It takes about an hour or whatever, hour and a half. But all the stuff to actually make the dough is 10, 15, 20 minutes, including cleanup. There's no reason you shouldn't be doing this. Why is it so important? Number one, you're controlling the ingredients. And again, especially if you have kids, you want to be careful what you're putting in their bodies. Now, I'm not trying to be an alarmist and scare you here by saying that regular store-bought bread is poison. But I'll give you an example. And this just happened. This is what made me think of this. I was going through the pantry the other day, and I found a package of hot dog buns that had fallen behind on a couple of boxes where like the rotisserie machine and some other crap was and a cooler or two in the pantry. Now I know I didn't buy those hot dog buns at all this year. In fact, I specifically bought them for a cookout that happened in October of last year. Now the weird thing is this: only like 1 or 1.5 of the buns had mold on it. All the rest of the hot dog buns, everything was an open package, or I don't know. It may not have been. I can't remember. But only 1 or 1.5 of the buns had mold. The rest of them looked brand new. They were still soft. They still looked like, I could have pulled them out and served them to somebody and they wouldn't have known. I probably could have eaten them and wouldn't know the difference. That isn't normal, in my opinion. When you make homemade bread, typically you got about 3, 4, maybe 5 days before it starts to get moldy and hard and it's no longer good. How did this stuff, we're in May. What is that, 6, 8 months? October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May. That's 6 to 7 months, depending how you slice it. How is it not moldy and hard? What are they putting in there? Now, I know they use, what is it? There's all kind of preservatives and other ingredients they add in there. There's calcium propionate and other I forget what it's called, GRAS, something or other. There's a bunch of things that are allegedly safe. It's okay, yada, yada, yada. And they have a more sterile environment where mold is not introduced to the process. But still, how can you have bread that's 6 or 7 months, hot dog buns, that haven't molded? That's all I'm saying. And whenever you smell, and again, I bring this up, especially if you got kids. I remember my mom baking bread for us when I was a kid. It was an experience, not just seeing her knead the dough and do all this stuff. It is not difficult to do. You combine the ingredients, knead it up, let it sit for a little bit, and then you put it into a pan and you bake it. Basically, let it rise a second time. But it's simple. It tastes so much better. The house smells good, and it tastes, especially when you pull it out of that oven, you slice it and put fresh butter on there. It is unreal. And if you got kids, you want to be careful what you're feeding them. So, again, not my place. You make your own decision. but it is what it is. I highly recommend that. Try it as a family project. If you don't like it, you got to do it again. There are no special ingredients that won't go to use. Do yourself a favor, get the instant yeast as opposed to whatever the other kind's called. The instant you can just add in dry and knead it into the mixture. If you get the other yeast, you got to proof it, which means you got to put it into a cup of warm water with sugar and make sure it's good and so forth. It's so much easier. Just get the regular little packet of instant ready to go yeast. All right, we move on. We're running out of time here already. I can't even... Where are we at? Okay, man, if you are not in the United States and you have not kept up or if you are in the States, we have had these massive in the Midwest. So the Midwest, this is tornado season, springtime in the Midwest. Tornadoes are scary, scary things. Let me get a sip here of beverage. So tornadoes are scary. I have been present for some tornadoes. I have seen funnel clouds forming, and I have been there right after the aftermath of tornadoes. Fortunately, I've never been in a dwelling or a building that was ripped apart while I was in it by tornadoes. The last one I was close to, I was fine, and the dwelling I was in was fine, but literally a mile and a half down the road, it touched down and just left a swath of destruction for like 2, 3, 4 miles, whatever it was. A couple of my friends lived there, and their house, they were just gone. If you're not familiar with tornadoes, when they happen, stuff is there 1 minute and literally it's just gone. So tornado spawning storms leave 25 dead in 2 states and swaths of destruction across central U.S. This article comes to us from CNN. A violent tornado spawning storm system tore across the central U.S., leaving at least 25 people dead in Missouri and southeastern Kentucky as it cut a path of destruction through several states. This just happened 48 hours ago or less, Friday, and then I think they got some more coming up. They're concerned may come back for more. The 18 deaths in Kentucky come on the heels of fatalities reported hours earlier on Friday in the St. Louis area, which endured widespread destruction. 7 people were reported dead in Missouri. I don't know if that's the most current. I saw some that said 27, and some were saying could get to 30 or more. Hopefully those were inaccurate reports. Large tornadoes have been reported in Missouri, Kentucky, Illinois, and Indiana. That's part of the Midwest, for those of you not in the States. The storms damaged homes and downed power lines across the Midwest and Great Lakes. As of this article being written, about 459,000 homes and businesses across a dozen states were without power as of Saturday, with Missouri, Kentucky, and Michigan among the hardest hit, according to poweroutage.us. Neat website. All right, we got to go to the break. When I come back, we're going to jump on the website, see where the power outage numbers actually are, and follow up on this, and then what you can do to prepare yourself for emergency preparedness, storms, natural disasters, etc. When we get back from the break. More Make It Out Alive with Sam Wilson after this.
This is Dave. Dave makes the tastiest burritos in town. But
nobody knows I exist. I'm serving culinary masterpieces to my mom and a raccoon named Dennis.
Then came Jenny.
Dave, have you tried radio?
Radio, isn't that for traffic reports and late-night alien talk?
It's also for thousands of people who don't know you exist.
Huh?
Yet, radio is affordable, reliable, and it works. Not instant burrito fame, but people start showing up kind of results.
So I partnered with Gold Country Radio, and now people know I exist. I've got new customers, catering calls, and Dennis brought a possum. I think they're dating.
I told you. Radio gets your business heard.
Next up, we a second table, maybe indoor seating.
Want to get your business heard? Visit goldcountryradio.org and click Contact to get started. Radio, small budget, big reach, real results.
You're listening to the MOA broadcast with Sam Wilson. Will you make it out alive? And we are back from the break. Folks, thanks for joining us. I am your host of the Make It Out Alive broadcast, Sam Wilson. Okay, now when we left this off, we were talking, I gotta, just real quickly while I was taking the break, I had a little snack and I was checking some news and so forth. I am so tired. I hate complaining. I hate whining. Usually I'm the type of person, if you got something negative to say, then it better come with a solution, or it better be, hey, we need to address this, or what are we going to do to fix it? I am so tired of these celebrities, though, thinking that their opinion is so important on news matters. Just go play dress up, put on your makeup and your costumes, and prance around and take your ridiculous amounts of money and be quiet. Nobody, I can't speak for anybody else. I don't want to hear, I don't want to see your political opinions, your religious opinions. You're trying to force this stuff down. I don't care. Go away. Man, I'm sorry. I hate to get negative, but goodness gracious, there were several articles in a row where this celebrity is telling me how to do this, and another celebrity is telling this person and this group and this country how they should behave and who they should support. Just shh, go away. All right. Okay, that's enough of that. Now, we left this on the tornadoes. So there were massive tornadoes. They're at least so far, they've been able to confirm 25 to 27 dead in Kentucky and in Missouri. I'm from Missouri. St. Louis was not far from where I was, not too far anyway. We used to get tornadoes every single spring that they call it tornado season. It was a mess. You hated it. You'd hear, we lived in a very small town, and there would be the alarm bell, going and letting you know. And it was just scary. If you never experienced a tornado, they come out of nowhere, and then like 2 minutes later, it's gone. A lot of times you'll be preceded by thunderstorms and so forth. But whenever the tornado comes rolling through and then it's gone, you may go outside 2 minutes later and it's beautiful. The sun is so bright, the fresh smell, I guess the nitrogen and whatever else being released by the soil, it's amazing. But it's horribly frightening. I don't care how much of a tough guy you are. You go through a tornado, you realize how small and biodegradable you are. But back to the story. As of this article, there were 459,000 homes and businesses without power as of Saturday. When I checked it during show prep, it was at 301,581. We're going to go ahead. We have the computer set up here, if I can do this without messing up the sound. And we are going to check. There's a website for those of you listening, poweroutage.us, POWEROUTAGE.us, and it shows you, I don't know how accurate it is, but it's quoted by a number of articles. Here we go. Let's refresh that and go by region. Let's see here. Okay, now that's interesting. As of the writing of the article, it was 459,000 homes. When I did the show prep earlier, it was 301,581. Right now, it's showing 291,404 homes and or businesses without power, and the majority of that is in the U.S. We got Missouri, Arkansas, Texas, and a couple others. So it says this is part of a multi-day spate of widespread severe weather stretching into early next week. So it's not over, folks. If you're living in that area, if you are, you probably won't be listening to this. You won't have power in all likelihood. Another round of severe storms is expected near the border with Mexico, thrusting more than 20 million Americans across the Southwest into the risk zone. So what is the point? What I wanted to get to is, and I feel horribly for these folks that are without power and fortunately, we're not in the dead of winter. The Midwest gets some frighteningly tough and cold and rough winters here. Let's get our paper moved on. So we're going to jump right to it. The point being, at least the weather is somewhat milder there as far as the temperature extremes. Now I'm talking to you right now, the listener, if you woke up without power, and the stores were empty, which would happen in a matter of minutes. I'm telling you, we experienced this in the pandemic, the quote unquote pandemic that we had recently. What would you do? You've got, especially if you have a family, this is incumbent upon you to take care of them. Even if you're by yourself or whatever, or just one or two, it's incumbent, but especially if you have kiddos, you need to be prepared for this. It doesn't require a huge effort to be prepared, but you have to do something, because I referenced before in another episode, World War Z. And for those of you not familiar with that, it's a zombie movie. We won't get into the zombie part. It's a whole other, it's fiction. I understand that. It's a movie. I get it. However, there was in my opinion, a very realistic scene earlier on in the movie when things started to go bad and people didn't realize what exactly was happening, but they knew they needed to prepare. The local stores and grocery marts and convenience stores got swarmed and people were just grabbing anything. And if you think that's far-fetched, think back to the beginning of the quote-unquote pandemic that we had a couple of years ago. I went into a number of places where it wasn't looting. People weren't going crazy, but they were literally just running in there and grabbing things like hand sanitizer, masks, gloves. Remember what happened with toilet paper? There were lines going around the block at places like Walmart and Costco where people were stocking up for whatever the inexplicable reason was that toilet paper was going to be at a shortage. So if you think it can't happen, it can. And remember, if the power's down, stores may or may not have generators. If you're paying with card, you're out of luck. If they don't have power, they don't have internet, they don't have card processing and what they call POS, point of sale stations, you're out of luck. So the question is, and we covered this was, I think, in one of our first 1 or 2 episodes, this is really the core of what the MOA, the Make It Out Alive broadcast, is all about. What would you do? Would you be prepared if you woke up, no power, stores are down, electricity is down, gas pumps aren't working, etc.? A couple of things to think about. If you're not, never fear. You have time. Hopefully, if you're in the Midwest, you're living it right now. And my sincere condolences. I've been there multiple times. It is not fun. Things like food, shelter. In this case, shelter is not just protection from the elements, but primarily temperature regulation. Okay, meaning keeping your body temperature above 98.6 degrees or at 98.6. Water, first aid, fuel, and a big one, don't forget prescription medications. If you're on prescription medications and all of a sudden you need to re-up and the pharmacy is no longer there. If you ever experienced or seen, I was looking at the footage during the break from the aerial, from the helicopter of the parts of Kentucky and St. Louis. Guys, if you've never experienced a tornado, it's insane. Literally, 1 minute, a house or a structure or a business or a vehicle or whatever, a trailer park. Those tornadoes sure love trailer parks. 1 minute it's there, and the next minute it's gone. It's gone. What if the pharmacy doesn't exist anymore? And what if you can't get out to go to drive to the nearest one away, maybe 20, 30, 60, 80 miles away? If you're not from the States and you don't realize how massive America, North America, it's huge. I don't live in a super remote area, but the nearest actual town, like a real town where I have like grocery stores and, UPS and, pharmacies and things like that, it's a 35-minute drive away at 60, 65 miles an hour. Okay. And there are plenty of places where you're more remote than that. Are you prepared? Do you have your prescription medications? How long could you survive? Assuming, let's just go ahead and give you the benefit of the doubt, your home wasn't destroyed, all your stuff wasn't blown up or whatever, swept away in a flood or a tornado. How long could you go? Let's go through a few things. This isn't an exhaustive list. All you have to do, I wrote it down here. What is it? If you go and do a search on, I wrote it down. I can't find it now. All you got to do is do a search on like emergency or natural disaster preparedness list. If you do a search on that, you'll get an exhaustive list that will give you a lot of things. This is a simple one. I've lived through several power outages, ice storms, snowstorms, tornadoes, etc., floods, etc. And I've come up with kind of a list of things that gets me and my family through a 3 to 5 day period, no problem. Here we go. I'm going to go through this briefly and quickly here. Rice, you want some dry goods. Okay, so you can do all rice, all pasta, couscous. Those are all things that you can easily rehydrate in warm or boiling water and have food very quickly and require very little else. So rice, pasta, choo-choo train in the background, couscous, flour, cream of wheat or grits, depending on whether you're from the South or not, especially if you've got kids. You want to have something there for breakfast. Instant potatoes, evaporated milk, salt, sugar, oil, cooking oil of some sort, olive oil, avocado oil, vegetable oil. I prefer avocado, higher temperature, whatever, different story. Beans. Beans can take a while to cook, but you can let them soak for a while, and that can lower the cooking time as well. So you're going to want to, if you've got like dehydrated foods or freeze-dried foods or emergency meals and food, that's going to be fine for a day or so, and then you're going to be sick of that crap, and you're going to want real food. This stuff is super easy. I did a whole episode or two on how to dehydrate things like ground beef and stuff that is shelf-stable, does not require refrigeration or freezing, and it will be good for months. And all you have to do is put it in boiling water for a minute or two and then let it steep for 15 or 20 minutes, and you have amazing meals. So go back, listen to those episodes if you haven't. Yeast, baking soda, and or powder. You can make bread very easily if you still have electricity or generator power. Chicken and beef bouillon cubes. Seasoning is going to be supreme if you don't have things like hot sauce, because otherwise food is going to taste very bland. After day 2 or 3 of eating cold or barely warm rice with no soy sauce, if you don't have any, or hot sauce, you're going to want things and other dishes like chicken and beef bouillon cubes. And the thing with all of this stuff, you could go in and for the cost of a week's worth of groceries, regular variety of groceries, you could easily have a week's worth of food for 2, 3, 4, 5 people of just the staples, the bare dry goods. A lot of these things you could do without. The rice and pasta and things like salt, oil, and so forth are going to be, to me, the biggest ones. But then you're going to want things like convenience foods, ramen, mac and cheese, instant soup, and noodles. Especially, again, if you have kids, sometimes you need to just shut them up. Get something that you can boil water, stick it in, put the boiling water in the cup of noodles or the ramen or whatever, let it sit for a couple of minutes, and give it to them while you sort out the rest of the issues that the grown-ups are going to be dealing with. So you're not going to be doing gourmet meals, even if you have electricity. If there's a real emergency going on or disaster, you're going to want stuff that's quick, simple, and hopefully nutritious. So again, the dehydrated ground beef is a fantastic one. Go back, check that episode out. Very, very easy to do, very shelf stable, and it rehydrates and tastes just like regular ground beef. You can add it to almost any meal. Just as important, I'm going to read some of this here because I prepared it so I wouldn't forget it. Think of the actual meals and menus that you would have and how you would prepare them and the ingredients you would need. A lot of things like salt, pepper, hot sauce, and so forth, flour, rice, pasta. These things are shelf stable for years, if not decades. You can put those into a bin. You want to make sure there's someplace safe from if you ever get a mouse. If you ever had a mouse in your house, it's crazy the amount of damage they can do. So you want to take your emergency preparedness foods, that's separate in the pantry. You put that into one of those big plastic bins like you put construction materials or tools into that has a snappable lid, and that's off limits. You don't touch that. You don't touch it. That is for emergency only, okay? But protect it from mice and from water or flood. If your water heater breaks or you get a flood or whatever else, you don't want your emergency preparedness stuff ruined. What about a fuel source if you're going to cook? We covered that again in the first 1 or 2 episodes. A small propane stove with 4 or 5 propane canisters, or a big 5-gallon, the 20-pound propane canister, whatever it is, that can power a lot of cooking, especially if you're very judicious in how you use it. How much water? There, again, you can do a lot of research and find this out. A good place to start is about 10 to 20 gallons per person. That isn't that difficult to do. Quick life hack here. All you have to do is go to whatever your supermarket, your big box store, Walmart's or Fred Meyer or Menards, wherever you're at in the U.S. or wherever. Get those big 5-gallon jugs that go into water coolers. They have capped lids on them. You fill those up with water, and you got 5-gallon jugs of those. You get 4 or 5 of those or more, depending on how many people you have. But the rule of thumb is a gallon per day per person. Remember, that's not just for consumption, for drinking. That's also for cooking, for rehydrating food, etc. You want to be thinking about that. Water's going to be very important. Depending on how your water system is set up in your town, if the power goes out, you may not have water coming into your house. Or there may be a boil water effect in place, or in effect. If that is, then now you have to add in the additional fuel that it's going to require to boil water if your power is out and you're going off of propane or whatever else it is that you're doing. So think about those things. Now, let's see, did we cover that? Yeah. If the water is down, guess what's not going to be working properly? Probably the toilet. Depending on where you live, some of these systems are set up differently. You need to be thinking ahead. We're not going to get too graphic here on the show today. You can easily do a search and find all kinds of info, but think 5-gallon bucket, construction trash bags, and a few other things, because you can't continue to use a toilet if it doesn't flush. Otherwise, you're going to have some serious problems on your hands. Then think about how you're going to clean and wash your hands with no running water. Do you have hand sanitizer? Do you have soap? Do you have other fresh water that's just set aside for washing your hands? There's a lot that goes into this. Disease can spread very rapidly whenever the water and sewer systems go down or back up, which can be even worse. So again, you need to be thinking, how am I going to clean and sanitize, especially if you have kids or multiple people in your family or in your home? You don't want to think about this stuff for the first time when you're living it. Trust me. Allow me to get a sip from my beverage here. Okay, another thing, light. Almost everybody has a handful of flashlights floating around their house. Flashlights are great if you're working on a task. There are a couple of things I would recommend, though, to modify that list or to add to it. Flashlights are great for directional light. If you're doing something, if someone's holding a flashlight for you, whatever, I would recommend a headlamp. Headlamps are now very common. You can get them very cheap. Get LED. Those batteries will last a long time. A headlamp or 2 or 3, again, depending how many people you have. Headlamps are great. It allows you to do things hands-free. More importantly, though, what I have found to be, and power goes out here a couple times a year usually, sometimes for a couple of days at a time. So I can speak from experience. This may not be the best solution from you, but I have found what works for me. Get yourself some lanterns. I have 2 types of lanterns. Okay, these are both LED. I have a propane one as well. Propane, that would be my last recourse. Number 1, once the propane's gone, they're worthless. Number 2, they're a little more fidgety. You have glass and so forth. Plus, you have the mantles and wicks and everything else. But I have them. You should have one just in case. And preferably, your propane lantern should run off the same propane cylinder as your cook stove, so you can interchange those things. But I also have 2 other types of lanterns. One is a battery-powered lantern, so that when it dies, I can just slap in fresh batteries, and I'm good to go. And I have a package or 2 of those batteries to easily get through 3 to 5 days. Then I also have a rechargeable lantern. Now these are both electronic. They're the LEDs. That you can vary the light intensity from very low to very high. The thing is flashlights are directional light. The lanterns are going to put out ambient light, and that's probably not the right terminology for it or the right term, but they're going to put out light in a circle and light up a whole room. Okay, candles are good too, but you have to be very, very careful with candles. Especially with kids, the last thing you want to do is start a fire, because guess what? Emergency services are probably either non-existent or they are packed out, jammed up, responding to emergency calls, usually health problems, okay? And accidents become very common because if the power is down, the stoplights and other things stop working properly. If you're in a city, things get very complicated. If you're out in the country, chances are you're prepared for a lot of this already, whether you know it or not. But yeah, think about lanterns. The rechargeable lantern, then I have a power bank that's the one I use first, and I save the battery-powered one for when I actually need it, because you want to have a solar bank where you can recharge your stuff, and or a power cell that will charge up a lot of things like phones, and that will give you potentially internet if the phone system is still, the cell phone systems are still working. But you want to be able to have that phone available, and then, of course, some type of radio so you can hear what's going on. I like the walkie-talkies that have the weather radio stations built in, the weather channels built into them. Then I also have a separate radio. You can get those cheap off of almost anywhere that has a crank. So that has a little dynamo in there that you can crank it up, and that way, no matter what happens, you have juice. They can also be charged via USB and so forth. But if all else fails, you can crank them up. And a lot of times, emergency services will broadcast instructions over those weather radios. Those are important. Additionally, if you have pets, especially if you have pets that have medications or whatever else, do you have everything you need for your pets, medication-wise, food-wise, for at least, you want to be prepared for, in my opinion, 3 days is just the beginning. Most situations, emergency situations like that, they get under control in 72 hours, which is about 3 days. You want to be prepared for at least 5 to 7, and 10 days to 2 weeks is much more preferable. Usually at that point, after 3 to 5 days, the government's going to be able to assemble and get some people in there, hopefully. But as we learned in North Carolina and other places you don't want to have to depend on the government. I know it's a lot. I've been talking fast. We had a ton. I'm going to have to cut 2 or 3 stories because this stuff is very important. I want to make sure we got it in there. Let's see. Did we leave anything else out here? We talked about using the restroom. Again, think 5-gallon bucket, plastic, 55-gallon, those super thick plastic trash bags, and a foam pool noodle. Put it together. You'll figure it out, or do some searches online. Let's see, and everything you need for your pets and animals. We can go on and on, of course, but there it is. Do emergency supplies in case of natural disaster. That's the search you want to type in. You'll get tons. Emergency supplies in case of natural disaster. There will be tons of lists from all kinds of different websites that are much more exhaustive than I can cover in this show. Let's see. Here's the other thing. I've been in several different natural disasters and power outages, one of which made national news. It was a big, huge deal a while back. And it's not enough. Here's the thing, guys. It's not enough to have all these supplies. I was at a place at the time where we had all kinds of gear and the people around me had all kinds of gear. But when the power went out, nobody knew where their stuff was. They had it in storage. They had it in sheds and garages. Some of these people couldn't get into their garages because the garage that was separate from the house, there was the garage door opener had no juice, and they couldn't get into their garage to access their gear. I had all my gear. I knew exactly where it was. I could find it literally in the dark, and I did. And guess what? I became extremely valuable and in demand almost and literally instantly because I had gear and equipment and provisions and other things that made me extremely valuable. You need to make sure you know where this stuff is. The best way, in my opinion, put it all in a couple of these bins, like these, 30, 40-gallon bins that you see like at Home Depot. They're like $7-8. They're cheap. Get the ones that have latching lids, preferably, and that makes them almost waterproof unless they're totally submerged. But they'll survive a rain or a flood easily as long as the water doesn't go up inside the seal there, the seam where the lid meets the container. And put your gear in there. And even more preferable is to write on the outside with Sharpie or some other permanent marker what is in that particular bin. Okay, very important. The last thing you want to do when the lights are out, the house is being flooded, or there's a pipe burst, or there's a fire, or whatever, is have to wonder where my stuff is. You also want to make sure you have your important papers, things like passports, green cards, all kinds of other banking records, and whatever else. Have pictures of those on like SD cards or someplace secure, or you want to have the physical hard copies in a plastic folder that's waterproof or resistant, ready to go. Sometimes it doesn't happen. These poor folks in Kentucky and Missouri, they had almost no warning this time. I don't know what happened, but all the articles I read, there was very little to no warning. It just came out of nowhere. 1 minute they have a house and all their stuff, and the next minute it's gone. That's how you have to think of this. Okay, was there anything else I left out? Yeah, the typical 3 to 5 day scenario is what you wanna prepare for. That to me, 5 to 7 or 7 to 14 days is minimum. You should be able to not leave your house, your apartment, your whatever you're dwelling for 14 days minimum in case of emergency. Because I'm telling you right now, the vast majority of people are not going to be ready out there. And you don't want to be on the streets with them because things are going to get hostile very, very quickly. You do not want to have to deal with that. And this week I mentioned earlier, where'd that paper? There it is. We talked about that movie, World War Z. So if you haven't seen it, I was just talking with somebody who listens, a listener of the show and a friend the other day, and they said the book was even better. I haven't read the book. That's on my list of things to get to. But in the beginning, when people realize they don't know exactly what's going on, but they know something is happening, just like happened here in the States and probably around the world when the quote unquote pandemic situation, and I say that somewhat sarcastically, you take that however you want, people just went crazy. They don't know what they're doing. They haven't planned, and they were getting canned pineapple rings, whatever, ravioli, anything and everything that was there. They were just grabbing it because they were panicked. You don't want to think about the situation. That's how I close the show every day or every time. If you wait to prepare, it may be too late. So make sure you plan ahead. You don't want to have to be there wondering what you need. And so we'll leave it there. We got 2-3 stories. I don't have to cut these. I don't have time. We're going to finish up by going to, that's right, Florida. if I can get these papers. For some reason, they're stuck together here. And that's what I wanted to mention. So, guys, we've been doing on a weekly basis. We've been doing, in addition to the MOA broadcast, we've also been doing the true crime episode. If you haven't had a chance to listen to it, they've been turning out really well. Been getting lots of good positive feedback. The last 4 episodes, we've been focused on some of the most savage killers for the Italian mafia. Just to be fair, in another episode or 2, we'll probably switch over to some killers for the Irish mob here in the United States and close out the series like that before we move on to some other true crime stuff. If you haven't checked it out, get it on your Spotify or Apple Podcast subscription, or go to gearconvoy.com and click the MOA tab. There's all kinds of good info there. To wrap it up, though, we go to, that's right, you guessed it, Florida. Our headline, Florida woman escapes storage container she was being held in after brutal assault. Holy smokes. This one comes to us from Fox News. This isn't even funny. This is just insane. A Florida man was apprehended in a wooded area in Washington County after a woman he allegedly assaulted and held in a storage container escaped. Excuse me. David Earl Gibson. Guys, I looked at his picture in the story. He looks even worse than you would imagine. He's allegedly the one that perpetrated this. It's a mess. He looks like what you would think Psycho Florida Man looks like. He didn't have a shirt on in the picture. He's a hot mess. Hopefully he goes away for a long time if indeed he did these things. We'll get to that in a moment. David Earl Gibson, 40, has been arrested on charges of sexual battery, aggravated battery, and false imprisonment, according to Washington County Sheriff's Office. The woman, who has not publicly identified, was severely beaten and needed medical attention when emergency medical services and law enforcement arrived. The sheriff's office said the victim told them that Gibson visited her residence, became irate, and started attacking her. He then allegedly bound and gagged her while he beat her and threatened to kill her. He allegedly used her mother-in-law's vehicle to take her to his residence, where he continued to abuse her, later putting her in a storage container out in the yard. The mother-in-law, let's see what happened. Oh, he is also accused of allegedly sexually assaulting her, pistol whipping her with a handgun and a blunt object before dragging her out of the house. When they found the poor woman, she was naked, handcuffed from behind, and duct taped around the mouth. He hog-tied her with a rope over her neck and tucked her legs up beneath her. So hog-tied, if you know what that is. She got very hot while she was in the storage container and thought she was going to suffocate and die. Eventually, she was able to get her legs loose and kick the plywood out and escape from the storage container. She got out and ran for her life. She was still handcuffed behind her back and used a tree to remove the duct tape from around her mouth. Then she made her way to the edge of a roadway where a passerby saw her. He stopped, picked her up, and called 911. Another woman, who was her mother-in-law, 74-year-old Letty Cooper Collins, was found dead and beaten to a pulp in her home. I guess that's where he stole the car, allegedly, the sheriff said. The sheriff's office said Gibson has approximately 33 total felony charges dating back to 1999, adding that he has been to prison 8 times. He's been charged with multiple counts of burglary, including armed burglary as well as arson. The sheriff's office had apologized for the horrific event that has happened to this family. Holy smokes. Guys, if you're going to go to Florida and get frisky, remember to bring protection. Holy smokes. Okay, that's it, folks. Remember, don't wait until you have an emergency to prepare. If you wait, it may be too late. If you don't make it out alive, you don't make it out at all. Stay safe out there, folks.